The bell had barely rung when the janitor's son slipped quietly into the auto tech classroom, clutching his worn-out backpack against his chest. The place smelled of grease and gasoline, a sharp contrast of the lemony cleaning supplies he was used to carrying for his father. He knew the routine here: stay at the back, keep his head low, and avoid the sharp stares and cruel laughter that always seemed to follow him. His father worked these same halls at night, emptying trash cans and scrubbing floors until his hands cracked. To most students, he was invisibly a man pushing a mop. But to them, his son was a reminder of everything they thought they were above. That morning, however, something was different. Sitting at the center of the garage was a red Mustang, its hood propped open like a stubborn puzzle waiting to be solved. The auto tech teacher, Mr. Harrison, clapped his hands and announced, "Today, we're doing something special. Whoever gets this engine running first will not only earn bragging rights but also extra credit for the semester." The room buzzed with excitement. The so-called car experts of the class rushed forward, armed with confidence and shiny toolkits their parents had bought them. They circled the Mustang like predators, tossing around terms like fuel pump, ignition coil, and spark plugs as though vocabulary alone would impress the teacher. The janitor's son stayed behind, watching. He could tell, even from a distance, that they were focusing on the wrong parts. He knew engines didn't always speak through smoke or silence. Sometimes they whispered through the smallest details. "Hey, mop boy," one of the boys called, tossing a rag at his feet. "Why don't you grab a broom? Cars aren't your thing." The laughter that followed was cruel, sharp, and familiar. He picked up the rag slowly, staring at the threads, but didn't respond. His silence only gave them more courage to pile on the insults. It was the same every day, and he'd learned to let their words roll off him, even though they sometimes stuck like burrs in his chest. The Mustang sat stubbornly quiet while the others took turns trying their luck. Tools clanged against metal, wrenches spun uselessly, and sparks flew where they didn't belong. An hour passed, and still the car refused to start. Mr. Harrison leaned against the workbench, his smile slowly curving into something between amusement and disappointment. He was waiting for someone to step up. From his corner, the janitor's son closed his eyes for a moment. He could almost hear his father's voice, calm and steady. "Engines are like people, son. They don't just break, they tell you why they're hurting. You just have to listen." He remembered countless evenings spent crouched by their old pickup truck, his father's rough hands guiding his smaller ones, teaching him not just to fix machines but to respect them. The boys were running out of ideas when one of them smirked and gestured toward the quiet figure in the back. "Maybe Mop Boy wants to try. Hey, you can mop up the oil leaks at least." More laughter erupted, echoing against the garage walls. This time, though, something inside him shifted. He straightened, tightened the strap of his backpack, and walked toward the car. The laughter wavered, uneasy now, as if they sensed they had pushed too far. He set his bag down, rolled up his sleeves, and said in a steady voice, "Move." The group hesitated, stunned by the calm certainty in his tone. Mr. Harrison raised an eyebrow but didn't stop him. Slowly, reluctantly, the students stepped back, giving him room. He leaned into the engine bay, his hands moving with a practiced rhythm. He didn't hesitate, didn't second-guess. He traced wires like he was tracing memories, touched bolts as though reading Braille. The garage had gone silent now, save for the faint clinking of tools in his hands. Every eye was on him, but he wasn't thinking about them. He was thinking about the late nights with his father, the way the truck had finally roared back to life after hours of patience, the pride in his father's tired eyes. He was thinking about how this moment wasn't just about a car-up, it was about proving he belonged here. He found the culprit quickly, a loose ground wire, hidden beneath the cluster of connections, and a stubborn relay that needed a firm tap. His lips curved into the faintest smile as he tightened the wire and tapped the relay with the back of the wrench. Then, with a confidence that surprised even himself, he slid into the driver's seat. The other boys chuckled, expecting failure, but when he turned the key, the Mustang's engine thundered to life. The roar filled the garage like an explosion, rattling the tools on the walls. Gasps replaced laughter. He stepped out, wiped his hands on his jeans, and said quietly, "It just needed to be listened to." That was the moment the janitor's son stopped being invisible. The engine's roar still echoed in the students' ears as silence blanketed the garage. For a long moment, nobody moved. The Mustang purred steadily, as though mocking the hands that had fumbled over it all morning. The janitor's son stepped away, his expression calm, almost detached, but inside his chest his heart was hammering like a drum. He had done something none of them could. Yet he didn't look for applause, he simply let the machine speak for him. Mr. Harrison was the first to break the silence. "Well," he said, his voice rough but tinged with awe, "I've been teaching for 20 years, and I've never seen someone fix a relay that fast." His eyes narrowed as he studied the boy. "Where'd you learn that?" The janitor's son shrugged, avoiding the teacher's gaze. "My dad taught me. On his truck." That answer seemed to ripple through the group, sending a murmur of disbelief. Some of the students shifted uncomfortably, while others glanced at each other, as if ashamed of their earlier jeers. One of the loudest boys, who had been mocking him moments ago, muttered under his breath, "No way." He knew that from just a broken bar listening, but the doubt in his voice betrayed him. They all knew the truth. The kid they had dismissed had seen what they couldn't. Mr. Harrison clapped him on the shoulder. "You've got an ear for engines. That's not something you can fake, and it's not something every mechanic learns, either. Don't waste that gift." His words carried weight, and for the first time in the janitor's son's school life, authority wasn't laughing at him, it was recognizing him. He nodded quietly, but inside, he felt a warmth he hadn't known in years. Every insult, every cruel nickname, every moment of being overlooked had led to this. It wasn't vindication through shouting back or trading blows, it was through skill, through proving them wrong without needing to say a word. As the class slowly dispersed, whispers followed him, not insults this time, but questions. "How'd you know?" one boy asked cautiously. Another, more hesitant, offered, "Maybe you could show me sometime." Their tones had shifted from mockery to curiosity, even respect. It unsettled him at first. He wasn't used to being noticed except as a target. Later that afternoon, word spread beyond the garage. By the time the final bell rang, students in the hallway were already talking about how the janitor's son had done what the car guys couldn't. Some retold the story like a legend, how he'd touched the engine and brought it back to life. The tale grew larger with every whisper, and for once, his name was no longer the punchline. When his father arrived that evening, mop in hand, he noticed something unusual. Instead of laughter trailing his son down the hall, there were quiet nods, even respectful glances. He frowned in confusion as his son approached him, a faint smile tugging at the boy's lips. "What happened today?" his father asked, pausing his work. The boy hesitated, then said softly, "They brought in a Mustang that wouldn't start. A broken bar fixed it." His father raised an eyebrow, the corners of his mouth twitching upward. "You?" "Yeah." He looked down, almost embarrassed by the admission. "They couldn't figure it out. I just the broken bar remembered what you taught me." For a moment, his father was silent, his eyes glistening beneath the harsh fluorescent lights of the school hallway. Then, with a quiet chuckle, he said, "I always told you, son, engines talk to those who respect them. I'm proud of you." Those words meant more than the stunned silence of his classmates, more than the praise from Mr. Harrison. For years, he had carried the weight of their mockery, feeling small beside his father's mop and bucket. But in that moment, he realized something. His father had given him more than work-worn hands and late nights in a dusty garage. He had given him a skill, a legacy, and a quiet strength that no laughter could take away. That night, as they walked home together, the janitor pushed his bucket with a little less weariness, and his son carried his backpack with a little more pride. The Mustang had roared to life, but so had something greater, a belief that the boy was no longer just the janitor's son. He was someone who could change the way people saw him with nothing more than his hands, his heart, and the lessons passed down by the man who never stopped working for him. The next morning, the janitor's son walked onto school carrying the same frayed backpack, wearing the same faded shirt, but everything felt different. The air seemed to buzz with a new energy. students who had never looked his way before now turned their heads as he passed. Some whispered, some nodded slightly, and others, still embarrassed, avoided his eyes. He wasn't used to it. For years, the hallways had been filled with laughter at his expense. Now there was silence, curiosity, and a quiet recognition. When he stepped into the auto tech garage, Mr. Harrison was already waiting for him. The teacher gestured toward a workbench where a dismantled engine sat in pieces. "I want you to take a look at this," he said, loud enough for the rest of the class to hear. "If you can put it back together and get it running, there's a competition coming up, statewide. I'd like you to represent this school." The room stirred with murmurs. Compete? Him? The boy felt his throat tighten. He had never even dreamed of something like that. He glanced at the engine, its parts scattered like a puzzle. For a moment, self-doubt crept in. What if yesterday was a fluke? What if they all started laughing again? But then he remembered the Mustang's roar, his father's proud smile, and the confidence that had surged through his hands when the engine came back to life. He nodded. "I'll try." The next few weeks became a blur of grease, bolts, and late nights in the garage. While other students hung out after school, he stayed behind, studying manuals and testing parts. Mr. Harrison began to mentor him more closely, offering advice but also giving him freedom. "You've got instincts most mechanics spend years trying to build," the teacher said once. "Trust them." Meanwhile, his classmates watched from the sidelines, some grudgingly admiring, others genuinely inspired. The boys who had once mocked him started asking questions, timidly at first. "Hey, can you show me how you spotted that faulty wire?" one asked. Another admitted, "I didn't even know what a relay was until you explained it." The balance had shifted. He was no longer the outsider, but the one others leaned on. At home, his father noticed the change too. Each night, the boy returned smelling of oil and sweat, his eyes bright with determination. Sometimes he'd bring his notes to the dinner table, sketching engine diagrams on scraps of paper. His father would watch quietly, pride swelling in his chest. "Your hands," he said one evening, "they're going to take you further than mine ever could." The day of the state competition arrived, held in a massive convention center filled with the sound of clanging tools and revving engines. Rows of students from different schools stood ready, each representing their teams. The janitor's son, standing alone with his school's name on his badge, felt the weight of 1,000 eyes. He swallowed hard, then breathed in the familiar smell of grease and gasoline. It calmed him. Engines, unlike people, didn't judge. They either worked or they didn't. The challenge was brutal: diagnose and repair a complex fault in a limited time. Contestants scrambled, sweat dripping, tools flying. But the janitor's son didn't rush. He listened. Just as his father had taught him, he let the machine tell its story. Slowly, steadily, he worked, his hands moving with precision. Minutes ticked away, but by the time the final whistle blew, his engine roared to life. The judges exchanged looks of surprise before announcing him the winner. The crowd erupted in applause, and for the first time in his life, he stood on a stage, not as mop boy or the janitor's kid, but as a champion. That night, when he returned home, he placed the medal in his father's rough, work-worn hands. "This is yours too," he said quietly. His father's eyes filled with tears, and he pulled his son into an embrace, whispering, "No, son, this is only the beginning. The world is going to know your name." The janitor's son had not just fixed an engine. He had changed the course of his life, and in doing so, he had silenced every voice that had ever doubted him.